Alright, so hi guys. Today we're going to be continuing on with that kind of overview Middle Ages presentation. You were responsible for slides 2 through 5 last time. Today you're responsible for 6 through 8. Last time we looked at the early Middle Ages and the characteristics of the High Middle Ages. Today we'll be looking at important people of the High Middle Ages as well as the Late Middle Ages. And then, like I said, next week we'll start hitting more detailed things about like feudalism and the manor system and the church's roles, the plague, all of that fun stuff. So just kind of, this is just kind of being like, oh hey, this is going to come and this is the time period that we're looking at. So continuing on with the High Middle Ages, again, yesterday you were supposed to look at the characteristics of it, where this is kind of where we'll see feudalism start. That's kind of our major thing here, and Christianity has kind of become the major religion of the Europe during this time period. So with people and events, we'll see William of Normandy, so kind of Germany area, will end up conquering England as well. And England is kind of starting to become sort of a superpower, not to the extent that it will be later on in history, but it has started to become a pretty decent sized civilization. And so for it to be conquered is kind of a big deal. This is when the Byzantine Empire will start to have fallen. It's not completely overtaken yet, but it's on its very last legs. Again, we talked about the fall of the Byzantine Empire when we looked at Rome. We'll see a pope start to call for a crusade. A crusade is a battle for the Holy Land. We'll look at the Crusades a little bit more later. And we'll also start to see these very large, very elaborate cathedrals that are known as Gothic cathedrals. They'll start to pop up through northern parts of Europe. Again, it's not like dark and creepy looking. They're just very like elaborate. A lot of detail has gone into these because religion is very important to the European people during this time period. We'll also see the legend of Robin Hood during this era. So Robin Hood, if you don't know, it's about this guy who steals from the rich and gives to the poor. We'll look more into detail at Robin Hood near the end of this unit. We'll look at that and King Arthur kind of together. And also King John will sign the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta we'll look at later. Again, this is just an introduction. This would be like the overview of our notes before we got into the detailed parts of it. So this is just kind of breaking it down. We'll talk more about King John. We'll talk more about the Magna Carta. All of that will come later, I promise. This is just kind of to wet your whistle a little bit so that way you kind of have that preview of what's to come. So that is our High Middle Ages. So now we have our last grouping of time, our Late Middle Ages. And so our characteristics of our Late Middle Ages is that this is going to be our biggest period of societal upheaval, meaning that society is kind of going to go through a major transition during this time period. The church will also begin to start persecuting anybody that doesn't believe exactly what they tell them to. So the church is going to get kind of power crazy. We're going to see that the church doesn't always do the right thing in the Middle Ages. It starts in the High Middle Ages and continues on into the Late Middle Ages. And so you could potentially be burned at the stake if you said or did something that went against what the church told you to do. We'll also start to see gunpowder start to appear during European warfare during this time period as well. This is also when the Black Death will sweep throughout Europe, and the Black Death was a very, very highly infectious plague that got many people sick. It killed like a third of Europe at the time. People were quarantined. It was not a pretty sight. Kings will also start to become more powerful, and as kings become more powerful, they'll start to challenge the power of the church and the Pope and be like, hey, maybe what you guys are doing isn't always right. And I was born in charge, so I'm going to take my power back. And so there will be that power struggle there. And we'll also start to see nations in western parts of Europe grow as well. So they will start to become more powerful. As far as people and events goes, we will have Edward I, who will come in and invade Scotland. and he will be resisted. There will be a battle. It's the whole thing. We'll also see what is known as the 100 Years' War. The 100 Years' War takes place between England and France, and this will kind of be the first major battle or major war that we'll see between these two, and it will be a ongoing feud between England and France for the next 300 years, pretty much. We'll see what is known as the Great Schism in the Catholic Church, which is kind of where we'll see that some people aren't totally on board with everything that the Catholic Church teaches, and it will end up causing another group of people to start doing their own teachings. They still follow the Christian beliefs, they still follow the Christian teachings, but they do it in a different way because they feel like some things that the Catholics are saying aren't quite lining up with what they believe. We'll see in England, the peasants will revolt. They'll be like, we're being treated horribly, we need something new to happen. So they will start to fight back. We'll see this girl come on the scene. Her name is Joan of Arc, and she will lead the French to victory against England. Unfortunately, spoiler alert, Joan of Arc ends up being killed because of this. Like, they treat her like a witch. She gets burned. It's not a good time for Joan of Arc, even though she was like this great hero. But that is the Middle Ages, essentially. And we'll also see the printing press be invented. I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but the printing press allowed for, like, widespread books to be made. And so now it's not just a very specific number of people that are able to be educated. We'll start to see it being much more widespread because people have access now to these books. It's not taking hours and days and months to copy a book by hand. Now it can just be like letters can be laid down, and now we're able to make copy after copy after copy. It's like our first copy machine, essentially. And so it's a really big deal because now people don't just have to like write all the time, or they don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on what would for us be hundreds of thousands of dollars on books. It's much more readily available to people. So that is the end of our overview today. Again, next week we'll dive more into detail about specific events, specific things that I need you to know. And I hope you guys are doing okay. I love you so much. I hope you're staying safe. I miss you. But yeah, so bye.